Good morning, Willowbrook. Thank you for joining us for our daily Devo. Today we're in Colossians chapter 3. Verses 1 through 3 says this: Since then you have been raised up with Christ, set your heart on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden in Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory. Now, when I was in high school, I learned this verse as a student. I learned it in the New American Standard, and it says, if then you've been raised up with Christ. The reason why it starts in the Greek with a first-class conditional clause. It's really there for emphasis. It's where the author says something, but the audience absolutely realizes it's meant to be understood as a true. So in the Greek, it says, if then you've been raised up with Christ. And the original readers would have understood that to be, if then you've been raised up with Christ, and you certainly have. That's why many of the newer translations like the NIV or New Living Translation just say, since you've been raised up with Christ. But Paul said it with emphasis. He's trying to say, listen guys, because you have, and you know you've been raised up with Christ, I want you to know everything's different. You're no longer heading towards destruction. You're no longer living for the pleasures of this world. There was a slogan years ago that used to say, you only go around once in life, so go for all the gusto you can get. And what Paul's saying, no, that isn't true. You go around twice, and the second time is the most important because it's eternal. And so he says to this group really two major things. First, he says, set your heart on things above. Your heart, this is your longings. These are the desires you have in your life. Now, let me say there's nothing wrong with having desires on this earth. There's nothing wrong with having goals related to things in this earth. But we are to remember that those are always become second place to our desire, which is to know and be with Christ. He also says, set your mind on things above, not earthly things. That is, he wants us to put our concentration, our concern, our focus on the eternal, not the temporal. That's why he says the word set, or in the Greek it says fix. It means lock in. It kind of reminds me of what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4. He says that we set our minds on that which is eternal, not that which is temporal. It was Paul's understanding that everything you work so hard to get in this life eventually will be gone. You can work hard and be in great health, but one day your life ends. You can have great possessions, but guess what? When you die, those possessions don't go with you. You can have incredible power, but someday a person will come and replace that power. So Paul says we don't put our focus in the temporal, but in the eternal. See, if we understand that the eternal is what lets us know, really understand that this life makes sense. The eternal is what lets us understand and know this life is just. It is the eternal that gives us hope no matter what situation we face. See, if our mind is set on the here and now, then this world will be confusing, it will be unjust, and it will be hopeless. But for the believers, since they know ultimately our citizenship is not in this earth but in heaven, ultimately our hope is not here. We don't even have to understand everything that happens in this world as long as we trust the one who is in control, knowing one day what may not make sense now will make sense in the eternal. So that's the value. Set your mind on things above. Can I challenge you today? When your mind starts worrying about something that's temporal, when your mind starts locking on something that won't last, remember, set your mind on things above. Where Christ is seated at the right hand of God, the place that we will ultimately spend eternity. Guys, thank you so much for being part of our daily Devo. I hope you continue with us tomorrow.